Welcome, everyone. Um, it's a small group today. You're welcome to turn your videos on if you would like, and we can make it an interactive session as we talk about radiant skin from within, from an Ayurvedic perspective to skincare. So Ayurveda literally means the knowledge of life, the science and the skill of living a healthy life. It comes from the ancient structure of the Vedic knowledge, specifically from the Atharva Veda. It's an Upaveda or a sub-Veda of Atharva Veda. And Ayurveda sees the whole universe, the manifest universe, the physical world we live in, as made up of the 5 basic elements. So everything in the world, including our body, all the objects around us, are made up of some combination of these 5 elements. And what are the 5 elements? They are space, air, fire, water, and earth. Now, depending on the predominance or the combination of these 5 elements, there are 3 doshas, dosha meaning an energy principle. So there are 3 bioenergy principles called Vata, Pitta, and Kapha that govern all the functions in our physical body and also affect our mind. Vata is dominant in air and space elements. And as is the nature of these 2 elements, Vata is dry, light, cold, and mobile, and also rough. And all the functions in the body that Vata governs are mainly movement and communication. So inhalation, exhalation, ingestion of food, elimination of wastes, and the circulation of blood and nutrients. All these functions are governed by a healthy and balanced state of the Vata dosha. Pitta is dominant in fire and water elements. And the main function of Pitta is to provide the ability to digest and metabolize everything we consume. So Pitta is more hot, sharp, light, and oily. It has very similar features or attributes as the acids in our intestine. So the acids in our intestine can be seen as a physical manifestation of Pitta. So balanced Pitta leads to balanced digestive energy and transformation capacity. The third dosha is Kapha, which is more heavy elements, earth and water elements. It is more static, more heavy, more slow and cool and stable. And this governs all the functions of strength, immunity, structure, integrity to our body. So as you can see, all the 3 doshas are important. Each of them has their own functions that we all need. In fact, every single cell of our body has Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. However, each of us is born with the dominance of one or more of these doshas. In other words, all the 3 doshas may not be in equal proportion in each one of us. Some of us may be more Vata dominant, some of us more Pitta dominant, some of us more Kapha dominant, and some of us could have a dominance of 2 doshas. Like a person could be Vata Pitta or Pitta Kapha or Kapha Vata, or in rare instances, almost equal proportion of all the 3 doshas. Now, what we are born with, this signature that each of us is born with, that's called our body type or constitution, or in Sanskrit, our prakriti. And that remains the same throughout our life. So a Vata person tends to be more slim, more flexible, more quick in actions. A Pitta person is more organized, more well-built, has very sharp digestion, sharp features. A Kapha person tends to be on the heavier side, is slow and steady in nature, very grounded, very compassionate, nurturing. Now, as long as we are in balance with what we are born with our prakriti, with our constitution, that is health. When one or more of these doshas goes out of balance, that is called a vikriti, which literally means imbalance. And vikriti is what is a precursor to disease. When Vikriti accumulates in our body, in our system, it leads to disease. So, for example, if there's too much Vata, there's too much dryness, there's too much movement, a person can get very restless, very dry skin, dry joints, dry scalp leading to hair fall. All that can happen when there is an imbalance of Vata. Similarly, when there's an imbalance of Pitta, there can be acidity, burning sensation, skin rashes, again hair fall because of inflammation. And when there's excess of Kapha or an imbalance of Kapha, it can lead to too much weight gain, metabolic disorders, feeling very sluggish and difficult to digest food. All that can happen when there's an excess of Kapha. So I'll come to what health is, but the knowledge of these doshas and the ability to understand what's happening in our body in terms of these doshas helps us A, maintain a healthy state of the body and mind, and B, also address any imbalances. So even when you go to an Ayurvedic practitioner, this is one of the basic things we assess when we have a consultation. So before we understand more in terms of specific to the skin, let's walk through some of the basic qualities of these these three doshas. Like I already mentioned, a quick review though, is Vata is more dry, light, cold, rough, subtle, and mobile. Vata is not static. Pitta is more unctuous. Unctuous is the opposite of dry. It is sharp, it is hot, light, odorous. It has a peculiar smell. It is more free-flowing because it is liquid. Kapha is more earth and water element, so it's more heavy, unctuous, it's cold, it is slow, smooth, slimy, and stable. So, and this represents everything, you know. For example, a soda is more water and air element, so it is more, it can aggravate Vata. Or chilies are more fire element, so they can aggravate Pitta. Too much of coconut or too much of watermelon or too much of oil, it's more heavy and watery and earthy, so it can aggravate our Kapha dosha. So you can see these qualities in everything around us, the food we eat, even and activities. Too much of running, too much of exercise can lead to Vata increase. Too much sedentary lifestyle can lead to Kapha increase, and so on and so forth. So you can see these qualities and energies all around us. Now, doshas are energy principles. But for example, gravity is an energy principle. But we cannot see gravity. But say if I were to leave this pen mid-air, it falls. And in the falling of this pen, I can see the action of gravity. Similarly, doshas are energy principles. What do they act on? They act on the tissues in our body. So from an Ayurvedic perspective, there are 7 major tissues. Just like how there are different cells in our body, there are different organs in our body, there are different types of tissues in our body, even in modern understanding. Ayurveda looks at the Sapta Dhatus, or 7 tissues. So when we eat, on the basis of this principle of 7 dhatus or tissues, is that when we eat food, and the digestion happens in our stomach and small intestine, the essence of the food is absorbed into our plasma, into our circulation, into our bloodstream, right? So the first tissue that is formed when the essence of food is absorbed into our bloodstream is called Rasa Dhatu. In modern understanding, we can look at Rasa Dhatu as the tissue fluids, the interstitial fluids, the lymph, the plasma, etc. And this tissue it helps nourish. That's why when you're very hungry, you feel very tired and you eat something sweet, you drink something sweet, you immediately feel nourished and energy, you're able to regain your energy because it is the first tissue to be formed from our food and it nourishes our whole system. The second tissue is the called Rakta Dhatu, or refers to the red blood cells and the white blood cells. So this is what is the function is jivana or giving life, because it is the red blood cells that actually carry oxygen and deliver it to all the cells in our body. The next tissue that is formed from a balanced or a healthy Rakta Dhatu is the Mamsa or the muscle tissue, which is responsible for plastering the body and also helping our body do work. Only when the muscles contract can I lift something or keep something down. So it gives the ability to do work and also plasters our body. The next tissue that is formed from a healthy muscle or healthy Mamsa Dhatu is the Medo Dhatu or the adipose tissue. The loose correlation of metadata would be the fat or adipose tissue, which helps lubricate the joints in our body. And also it gives a cushioning or it gives insulation, protects our body from, it helps body maintain its temperature. Those are some of the functions of Meta Dhatu. The next is the Asti Dhatu or the bone, which is nourished by a healthy Meta Dhatu. And as we all know, bone gives a structure and support to our system. We can't even, the body can't have its structure unless there are bones holding like a framework, right? And then the next one is the Macha, which is the bone marrow and the nervous tissue. The brain, the spinal cord, all of this come under Majja Dhatu, and its main function is to help communicate and also fill the insides of our bone. And the last one is the Shukra Dhatu or the reproductive tissues, referring to semen, sperm in men and the egg ovum in women, helps create a new life. So the the three doshas act on these 7 dhatus. So our body is composed of these 7 dhatus and the 3 doshas or the 3 principles acting on these 7 dhatus. A very broad term. And like I mentioned, each dhatu or each tissue nourishes the subsequent tissue. So for example, to have healthy bone, it's important that all the dhatus before it are well nourished. If, say, the Mamsa Dhatu is very poor and needs all of the energy for itself, it's not able to pass on healthy nutrition and energy to the subsequent Dhatus, making them weaker and weaker. That's why in obesity, for example, where there is a block at the Meda Dhatu level, there is a problem of excess fat and the fat is not able to get converted to subsequent dhatus, accumulating at this stage where my cursor is moving. And that's why a lot of obesity patients or people suffering from obesity, they have issues with osteoporosis. Their bone density decreases, they have numbness in their feet, they have memory loss, and they also have low libido and infertility issues. So it's important to keep all of the tissues healthy and also the transformation at each tissue level also healthy for overall health. Next concept is Agni. What is Agni? Agni is the metabolic fire. Agni is mainly located in the gut, but also it's located at every single cellular level as well as every different dhatu level. So when the Agni is too little, we are not able to digest food. That's when we feel heavy and we feel that the meal, you had a moderate lunch, but you're not hungry by evening, or you had a moderate dinner, but next morning you still don't feel hungry because the Agni is not able to digest and metabolize the food. When there is too much Agni also, it can be a problem because it can cause a burnout. When there is a pot and there's a very high fire, it burns the contents of the pot. So it's important to keep a balanced Agni and eat to our Agni level. So that's why we recommend fasting sometimes to help clear out any imbalance in our Agni also. So there's a popular saying that you are what you eat, which is true because say I eat an apple and apple becomes part of my body and it becomes my body, right? So I am what I eat, but we refine that in Ayurveda and we see you are what you digest, because you may eat the healthiest of foods, but if you're not able to digest it, then it creates metabolic waste in the body. And that causes something called ama, which is very, very difficult to get rid of if it accumulates in our body. Now, the reason I established all these facts is that the definition of health according to Ayurveda is when all the doshas, all the dhatus, the Agni, and the bodily ways are all well balanced. Not just these, but also the mind and the sense organs and the senses are pleasant and happy. That is what we call health. So that's just a basic framework. Now let's switch gears and look at skin from an Ayurvedic perspective. Skin is called Tvak in Ayurveda. And I just mentioned about the 7 dhatus. So let me ask you a question. Where do you think, which of these tissues do you think is skin associated with? Rasa, Rakta, Mamsa, Meda, Asti, Macha, Shukra. What stands out to you? What do you think the skin is closely associated with? Any thoughts? You can chat or you can, unmute yourself and ask a question if you would like to, or you can raise your hand maybe and they can unmute you.
Bone.
Yes, bone. Okay. What else? Any other thoughts? All right. So skin is associated with the rasa dhatu, rakta dhatu, and mamsa dhatu. When the rasa dhatu is very weak, the skin becomes very dry. If you notice when we have a small cut, or even if when you go for a blood test, just a small prick is enough to draw the blood, which means the skin, the deeper layers of the skin are vasculated, which means they have a rich blood supply. And the mamsa also, because our muscles and the skin are very closely related. And if you notice the function also, mamsa gives the plastering nature of mamsa is very close to the structure and firmness that the skin provides. And the skin is governed by all the 3 doshas. The skin is one of the main sense organs. The sense of touch is one of the 5 we call them the indriyas, 5 sense organs, and it is what helps feel touch, and also when not just the touch of the body, but even the touch or the sensation of even air blowing past the skin is, even that subtle sensation is perceived by the skin. And all sense organs are associated with Vata. Now, when there is an imbalance of Vata, it can lead to dryness, and it can also show, and because when we age also, as we get older, what happens? The Vata in our body increases. In the early years of life, children, there is more Kapha in the system, irrespective of what our constitution is, up to about 20 to 20-ish years of our life, Kapha is dominant. That's why children have very soft and tender skin, right? And in the middle years, starting teenage, there is Pitta dominance. Up until about 50 years of age, there is more Pitta dominance. That's why you will notice pimples start coming in adolescence, right? Sensitivity, flushiness, all that happens to the skin in the Pitta age of life. And in the Vata age of life, which is after 50, the later years of life, there is more dryness in the skin, there is more wrinkling. It's as though the skin has lost its softness and moisture, right? That is because of the dominance of Vata. Now, irrespective of age also, because of season, because of our lifestyle, because of stress, you may see any of these doshas manifesting on the skin. For example, if you notice there is excessive dryness, or your skin is wrinkling too fast, or you wake up in the morning and you look like your skin is not fresh and you look like you aged more than you should be, that's an indication of Vata dominance in the body and also accumulating in the skin. Pitta is when there is any discoloration, typically reddish discoloration, yellowish discoloration, that shows up in the skin. And any inflammation, any swelling, all that can show up as Pitta. Now also, you may have heard of this disease called anemia, where there is poor hemoglobin or poor blood formation in the body. There the skin becomes very pale. That's also associated with Pitta and Kapha. When there is excess Kapha, how do you think it would manifest? The skin becomes very oily and excessively moist. It's all, if you touch their skin, it almost feels like there is oil dripping. But even in a healthy person, Kapha gives the moisture, the softness, the stability, like I gave given the example of kids. So all the three doshas have a role, and all the three doshas are important. A balanced state of all three doshas is required not just for the whole body, but specifically for the skin as well. Now, according to Ayurveda, there are 7 different layers to the skin. The first one is called avabhasini. Bhasini means to give a glow. So the outer glow of the skin, the complexion, the radiance is provided by this layer. We often, look at somebody and say, oh, wow, what are you doing? Your skin is glowing. That glow manifests. Actually, that glow is the subtlest essence of Pitta. A balanced state of Pitta, a nourished state of Pitta is what gives that glow. And this layer of the skin is responsible for that glow, the complexion, and the radiance. The second layer, which is a deeper layer, it's called lohita, which also literally means blood red. And this is related to the blood, and this is where the blood supply is. So the redness, any vascular issue, any red discoloration of the skin, red patches, as happens in some skin disorders, it manifests at this layer of the skin. The next layer is called Shveta. Its function is pigmentation, producing that pigmentation to give the color to the skin, or the right color. And if there is an imbalance at this level, it can show up as some discoloration on the skin. The next is called Tamra. Here is where metabolic activity happens. What do I mean by metabolic activity? We normally associate the gut with metabolism. But if you notice, the skin also is a site of digestion. We never think of it like that, right? Say when you apply some oil or some cream on the skin, it is going in, right? It's not just staying on the surface. And it needs to be absorbed by the body and transformed, right? And that transformation happens through a component of Pitta in the skin called Bhrajaka Pitta. So the skin also digests. And that's why we always say, if you don't like to put something into the mouth, do not put it on your skin, because it is going into your bloodstream. Just the second layer of the skin onwards is connected to blood supply, right? So metabolic activity happens here. When there is imbalance at this level, it can lead to skin inflammation. The next level is called Vedini, which literally means pain in Sanskrit. And this is the function of this layer is sensation, pleasant or unpleasant sensations. When you get a massage, you feel good. That is at this level. Even when there is a prick or a cut, the pain, the sensitivity happens at this layer. And then there is Rohini, whose function is healing or regeneration. We all know, even from modern biology, that the skin grows from inside out. So the deeper layers of the skin is where there is regeneration. And the Mamsadhara, it is believed as more related to the muscle, connecting the skin to the muscle, or even to the adipose tissue. So those are the 7 different layers. And incidentally, and I would say unsurprisingly, there are 7 layers of skin even in modern physiology. 5 layers of the epidermis and 2 layers of the dermis, and then there is hypodermis, or the subcutaneous tissue. They are corneum, lucidum, granulosum, spinosum, the stratum basale. papillary and reticular layer. The goal is not to say that they are the same, but the goal is to point out that there is a very similar structure or understanding to what is inside the skin in both traditions. So how can we connect the two? The avabhasini, I said, is where the glow happens. That can be correlated to the stratum corneum. Lohita can be where the blood flows, can be correlated to the dermal vasculature in the skin, in the dermis. Vedini or sensation to the nerve endings in the dermis. That's why even when we rub our hand against an object, we feel the sensation. Rohini to the cellular regeneration and fibroblasts in the dermis and deeper tissues. Mamsadhara to the collagen and the subcutaneous tissues, like I just mentioned. So one thing to note is that Ayurveda places more emphasis on the function and pathology of the skin, whereas modern science describes it in a more structural, physiological level. But both sciences look at the same thing from different lenses. So now let's look at the different types of skin. Vata skin. By Vata skin, I mean a skin that is affected by Vata, either due to aging or due to diet lifestyle imbalances. So it typically is more dry, wrinkled, rough, cold to touch, and often has blackish discoloration. And what are the aggravating factors? A lot of travel, excessive dehydration, having an irregular routine in terms of sleep, meals, not getting enough sleep, exposed to too much noise or overstimulation of the senses, too much talking, eating a lot of cold, dry, light foods and cold drinks like soda, popcorn, chips, etc., and being exposed to cold, windy weather. All of these increase the Vata and lead to a Vata-vitiated skin. Even mentally, too much worry, too much fear, too much restlessness and indecisiveness can lead to a Vata imbalance. So how do we bring it back into a state of balance? The principle is very simple. Using the opposite qualities. If Vata is dry and cold and rough, using something which has exactly the opposite qualities, which in this case is something that is more moist or more oily, more unctuous, more heavy and grounded, and more soft and lubricating. So one of the best things to do is to do something called Abhyanga. I don't know if many of you may have heard of this term Abhyanga in Ayurveda. It simply means massaging your body with some nice warm oil, depending on the season. You can use sesame oil in winters, coconut oil in summers, and so on and so forth. You can even mix some of the herbal oils that Shankara offers to your oil, to your base oil. That is really calming, relaxing, also hydrating the skin from deep within. And not just for the skin, it also helps lubricate the joints, improve circulation. When you apply oil and massage, it helps improve circulation and helps the flow of prana, the flow of Vata in the system, balancing all the three doshas and also hydrating and nourishing the skin. And it's also good to apply this before massage yourself a few minutes before a warm shower. So we don't apply a lot of oil on the body and leave it, because then that can cause a lot of stagnation, it can become too heavy. So after massaging the body with oil, you can leave it for about 5 to 10 minutes and then take a warm shower. Also, Vata aggravation on the skin is seen especially during the fall and dry, cold winter, early winter. You may have noticed your skin starts becoming dry in winter, right? It's because of the aggravation of Vata in that season. A Pitta imbalance on the skin can show up as redness. Sometimes a combination of Vata Pitta can show up as in this picture, redness with some dry flakiness, or burning sensation, increased temperature, all this can, or sensitivity to the sun. Some people, when it is summer, they go out for a long time, they have some spots on their body which are creating some irritation, or they're burning, right? All that is a manifestation of imbalanced pitta on the skin. And we know that pitta is more fire and water elements. Even excessive pimples, rosacea, all this are conditions where there is excess pitta involvement. So what aggravates it? Let us see first what aggravates it. It's a lot of mental stress that can aggravate this. Oftentimes people say when they get very stressed, the skin breaks out. You may have heard this from people. Too much pressure, too many deadlines, eating a lot of spicy food, a lot of alcohol, um, being in a very hot and muggy weather, and eating anything that is too sharp also, like a lot of soda, all that can also aggravate pitta. And how does it manifest? Like I said, redness, boils, burning sensation, irritability, anger, impatience, all of this shows up in the body and specifically on the skin as these symptoms. So what are the best things we can do to bring it back into a balance? Have something soothing, both internally and externally, having some cooling foods and drinks that pacify this pitta, avoiding spices, avoiding too much sharp um, drinks, alcohol, etc., helps reduce that pitta. Externally, applying, depending on the situation, I don't want to generalize it. In some cases, we don't want to apply an oil. In some cases, we want to apply an oil. So depending on that, applying something that is soothing and calming really helps pacify this pitta. And kapha, like I said, it is more kapha skin is more thick and it's very soft, very mushy, and it is bulky. Kapha skin is more bulky. And what aggravates kapha is a sedentary lifestyle, eating too much, eating a very high carb diet in simple terms, cold, heavy, rich, fried foods, leftover foods, and being in cold weather, damp weather, too little stimulation and too little exercise, all of this can increase kapha in the body and also on the skin. And it shows up as lethargy, sluggishness, sometimes too much heaviness on the skin becomes too pale. Even that is because of pitta. And even feeling very low, feeling very stuck, feeling like not doing anything, lack of motivation, all that comes from an imbalanced kapha. And the best way to bring it balance is to apply something stimulating, apply something invigorating, something a little more, not excessively hot, but somewhat warm that can energize the skin and the body. So these are the major signs of imbalance of the different types of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha skin, and also the general remedies to maintain a healthy skin include, like I said, drinking enough water, not too much, not too less, eating a balanced diet, maintaining your Agni. Like I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the different layers of the skin, having a balanced all three doshas and balanced Agni is what gives a good radiance to the skin. So it's not just what you put on the skin, but also what you put into your gut that can make a difference. And also, of course, regular hygiene and eating the right kind of food, regular exercise, all of this helps. But the skin is skin because it is exposed to the external. And so that's where it becomes important. What are you applying on the skin? Very harsh chemicals, skin products that contain a lot of processed chemicals, which are not easy for the body to digest, can also damage the skin from the external. So it's important to pay attention to what you're paying, what you're applying on the skin, and that is one of the intentions or mottos of Shankara. And some of my favorite products that I use daily are Shatadauta It's called the Ghee Sutra. It is ghee is really, really hydrating and nourishing to the skin. It supports the skin, nourishes the skin without being too heavy. And this is a special ghee which is washed 100 times with water and then processed with some herbs that are very good for the skin color, texture, and the glow of the skin. So this is one of my favorite products. The other one that I like to use is the Kumkumadi Thailam, which is Kumkuma literally means saffron. And this is a classical Ayurvedic formulation as well. In fact, the scripture or the text says that Saptaratra Prayogena Bharit Kanchana Sarnivam, which means applying Kumkumadi Thailam for 7 days, or actually 7 nights in a row. It gives a golden hue or a golden tinge. It makes the skin shine like gold. And there are a whole range of products that I will let Anu share in a little bit. Anu, do you want to do the questions now, or do you want to do the questions after you share about the products?
We actually have a question. Prachi's asking, which I think would be a good time place to ask. Which Shankara oil would you recommend for Abhyanga?
Yeah, so what I would recommend is, depending on your skin type, I would recommend using sesame oil and using one of our oils. I can recommend based on your skin type. You can mix one of our oils to a sesame oil base and you can apply it all over the skin. Specifically, if you would like, I can recommend something like the harmonizing oil or the Sundari oil. You can take a little bit and you can mix it to a sesame oil base and then you can apply that all over the skin.
Is Vata governing exhale different inhale? Contraction of muscles versus relaxation. That's another question.
Vata is governing both inhalation and exhalation. And contraction of muscles that happens as we breathe in and out. So Vata governs all movement in the body.
A follow-up from Prachi in terms of her skin type. She said that her skin is dry. So an oil recommendation for Abhyanga.
Oh yeah, you can use the harmonizing body oil that we have. You can use that with, don't use it just in itself. Use that you can use a sesame oil base and then you can mix this. In fact, any oil is good for you. Just plain sesame oil is also very good for your skin.
I see sesame recommended a lot. Can you tell me why that is recommended over jojoba?
Okay. So sesame oil is, like I just mentioned, it is also warm and it is easy for the skin to absorb and digest. And sesame oil is all that. And for the same reason, it's also the base oil for a lot of herbal oil preparations in Ayurveda. So you may have heard of oils like Ksherabala Thailam or Mahanarayana Thailam. If you've heard of these, it is the best, sesame or tila is considered one of the best pacifiers for Vata. And since the skin is so closely associated with Vata, and also most of us, especially in North America, in this season, there is more, not in this season, but in winter and fall, there is more Vata. So that's why it's one of the safe remedies for Vata and even for skin.
Great, thank you.